It's time for the show about the people and the places of the Carolinas with the occasional visitors. In addition to hosting the award-winning syndicated TV show Life in the Carolinas, Carl White writes a weekly syndicated column and now hosts this weekly show, the Life in the Carolinas podcast. Now you can hear the story about the stories. And now, here's your host, Carl White.
Bob Kogut.
Good morning, Carl.
How are you, friend?
Everything is just simply lovely.
That's great. You know, we saw each other, oh my gosh, at your studio. Well, we've seen each other since then, but at your studio, what was that, 3 years ago?
It was at least 3, maybe 4.
Wow. Can you believe how fast it's ticking?
It's unbelievable. I was thinking about that this morning.
You know, it's the days, the years are all going by so fast. Yeah. You know, we've got... To say Christmas is around the corner is a huge understatement. I mean, it just really clicks off.
Well, time's fun when you're having flies.
Yeah. Your life, Bob Kogut, for those who don't know who you are, is very interesting. Our time on camera, we talked about your fiddle making, and we're definitely going to talk about that now because there's clearly been an evolution from when we talked.
Yes.
But why don't you tell folks a little bit about your background, because I find that fascinating.
You think they want to hear that?
Yeah, well, whether they do or not. Folks, you got to stay around because Bob is a tremendous fiddle maker, and he has one with you, right?
Yeah, I brought my latest fiddle, Samantha, with me.
Samantha,
yeah.
Wait a minute. Is Samantha the perfect one?
Well, so far, yes.
Yes.
And so I'm not showing this one to any customers that come to look at fiddles because I want to keep her.
Right. And have you ever done that before?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I ended up, letting it go and thought, I'll just make another one.
Yeah.
It may happen. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, tell folks about Bob Kogut back in the days.
I was born and raised outside of Philly, South Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and never really was involved with music at all growing up, other than the old doo-wop, early rock and roll that we had in South Philly. And I was drafted to go to Vietnam in 1968. And passed my pre-induction physical, and there was a couple hundred of us in the station in Philly where they sent us to get our pre-induction physicals, sitting in our underwear, sitting on the bench, and passed my physical. And a Marine Corps recruiting sergeant comes walking down the aisle with his dress blues and his riding crop they used to have, and he pointed at different guys. I used to be in real good shape back then. And he pointed at me and said, "Son, you sit over there, you're going to be a Marine." And I was drafted in the Marine Corps.
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize back then, during the height of the Tet Offensive, the Marines drafted. And so I thought, well, if I'm going in, I'll go as a Marine. I was proud to be picked. And they gave me 3 days to report for duty. And that was not to be, because on the last day before I was to report for boot camp, I was hit by a drunk driver on my motorcycle. He ran the red light, and I was stopped at the light. And I ended up about 2.5 months in the hospital.
Wow.
The first 3 weeks unconscious. And when I woke up in my hospital bed, the orthopedic surgeon came in, and he said, "Hey, good to have you back. I see you're awake." He said, "I already operated on your leg. We're trying to save your leg. You need a few more surgeries on it." But he said, "I called your draft board. They thought you were AWOL for not showing up." And I told them what happened, and that you're 4F. You're not going anywhere, son. And so there I was. My military career never began.
Wow.
And so I had a head injury, and when I woke up from that, I had a tremor in my left hand. So back then, that was 68. They didn't have occupational therapy or anything in this hospital back then. And the neurologist told my dad, "Go to a pawn shop and get this boy a guitar and let him teach himself how to play, and that'll help his tremor." So my dad went and got me an old cheap guitar, and I spent about a month flat on my back because I had a back injury too, and I couldn't sit up. I had to.
You were in bad shape.
I had multiple fractures, head injuries. It was a mess. We didn't wear helmets back in those days on motorcycles. So, but anyway, I spent the last month of my hospital stay flat on my back, and I just taught myself how to play guitar. And so I was finally able to get in a wheelchair. I was a guitarist.
That's incredible.
And that was the end of my, not the end of my military career, but I never made it to military. But it was the beginning of my music career, musical life. And so I played guitar. And so I was in a wheelchair for a while after I went home. And so I had a lot of time to keep practicing and learning. So I got pretty good.
Did it come naturally to you, or was it?
It did. It's amazing. I didn't really go for. I should have gone for lessons.
Right.
They would have been good shortcuts for me over the years to learn. But I just it came natural, which it really amazed me. It still amazes me at the time because. I understand that doesn't happen with everyone who tries to play it.
And you weren't in the best of situations at that time.
No, I was in pain and I couldn't walk, and my cognition was off, from my head injury. But I was focused on that guitar, and it helped my tremor. And so I had a lot of physical therapy, and that's what I wanted to do for a living. I wanted to be a physical therapist.
Now, was that before or after you were experiencing the benefits of that?
After.
Okay.
Yeah. And what really got me was in last couple of weeks of my hospital stay. Back then, they used to put patients in a wheelchair and roll them down to the physical therapy department at the hospital. And you wait in line, you wait your turn for the PT to work with you. And they used to put me next to this gentleman. He was an older gentleman, a patient there who couldn't walk, and he was a physical therapy patient. And I had a real attitude back in those days. I was like 19 years old, and I hated all the people at the hospital. I hated myself. I hated God, and I was just a rebel. And they put me next to this old man, who couldn't walk. And as the days went by, I got to know this man. I never even got his name, and I was just mad. And I, at the time, I didn't really want to talk to him. And one day, we were sitting in their wheelchairs waiting for our therapy, and he said something like, "Boy, you're mad at the world, aren't you?" And I went, Pfft. And he said, "You know what? I want to tell you something." He said, "I'm on my way out. They think they're going to help me walk again. I'm not going to walk again. I've had my life." He said something like, "I'm rounding third base headed for home. You're just on first base in your life." He said, "How old are you?" I go, 19. He said, "You're going to get better. You have a whole life ahead of you, and you're going to walk again, and you're going to heal." He said, "I'm not." And I looked at him. I never heard anyone say anything like that to me before. And it went deep, the way he said it. And so we became kind of friends. Nice. I liked him for saying that to me, because I thought, he's probably right. And I could be in his shoes. Could be worse. And it was like maybe a few days after that, or maybe a week after that, I don't remember. They brought me down to therapy, and he wasn't there. So I asked the transporter who brought me down, "Where's that old man that you put me next to all the time?" He said, "He passed away last night. He's gone." And that really went to my soul. I thought, "Well, man, he was right."
Right.
I'm still here. So it changed my attitude. And all of a sudden I didn't have this chip on my shoulder anymore. And
what a gift.
I got better. I got walking, and but I'll never forget this old man. I don't even remember. I didn't even know his name. And
did that have an impact on your life to the point of where not only did it make you think and become introspective, but do you think that type of introspection and letting some of the anger go, did that benefit your healing?
That's a really good question I never even thought of before. But I would say, I bet it did. Because I felt different again. I felt like I do have a life ahead of me. And I am going to get better. And I guess it must have affected my physical ability to heal. Yeah, it must have.
Changed the way you look at life?
Because it changed my emotions.
Right. For the better? For the better,
yeah. It was like, it was exciting. I have a new life. It's not the old one before my accident.
Right.
But now I'm playing guitar, and I'm going to walk again, and I'm going to go to physical therapy school, and I did.
Wow.
And became a physical therapist. And
Was that easy for you because you wanted to do it so badly?
Absolutely. Before I got drafted, I didn't want to go to Vietnam. And I'm thankful that I ended up not going. But I didn't want to evade the draft, but I wanted to get a college deferment. So I applied to all the colleges around, and I got rejected by all of them because in high school my grades weren't that good. So I never made it to college at that time. But after I decided I wanted to be a physical therapist, there was just no stopping me. And so I started a community college outside of Philly where they accepted everyone. There were no rejections for applications. And I took my science courses and I aced all of them.
Wow.
Because this is what I wanted to do.
Your motivation
It wasn't
changed,
just to get good grades. To be a PT, these are the steps I had to take to get there. And I just felt like I was already there. It's just a matter of time and waiting for it to happen. And so I got accepted to physical therapy school at Temple University in Philly and did physical therapy for 47 years before I retired.
Wow.
But in the meantime, after I got off my crutches and all, I was playing guitar, so I was playing in a rock and roll band in South Philly. And
how old were you then?
I was like 20, 21 years old. And
perfect age,
so
right?
It was a lot of fun. We played, they had the riverfront industries like a Boeing, Vertol, and Westinghouse, Sunship Building, Scott Paper Company. And they had these waterfront, along Delaware River, waterfront bars where all the workers would go afterwards to have a cold beer before they went home. So we got jobs in those places where they paid you under the table because none of us were in the musicians union. And back then, in Philly, if you weren't in the musicians union, you didn't play anywhere, but we weren't. So we kind of snuck in. They paid us under the table. And those are good memories. That was a lot of fun. So that was my new life. I healed. I was walking. I was playing guitar. I was going to physical therapy school. It is like completely different than what I ever expected to do.
Talk about music and its impact. So now, obviously, you've had a couple of life-changing events. You're in the hospital. You meet someone that dramatically impacted your life.
My PT, yes.
And through that experience, you then became motivated to pursue your education, and you did whatever it would take. And then you were culturally in the midst of a very vibrant community of people who loved life, and entertainment was important. But there's a certain, Philadelphia is not a place where people don't express themselves freely.
That's right. You're right. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What do you think that experience, I mean, just thinking back again, we're not trying to psychoanalyze anything, Bob, but just from talking to so many musicians, everyone's got something that really keeps them going and push them. That whole idea, taking in your case, your $4,000 fiddle violin and getting in a car and driving to a $50 gig.
Yes. That's a good one.
I hear those type of stories, but then I also see people who have gone beyond that. But it seems like the love of music and the passion for entertaining and making people happy is universal, regardless of what level, right?
Yes, I believe that back then I was so involved and turned on by being able to play music, mainly because, as you mentioned a minute ago, the culture of South Philadelphia and the lifestyle was you don't express your feelings. You keep it to yourself.
Right.
Whether you're happy or not happy, you just keep it to yourself. No one growing up said, I love you in the families, in relationships. It just wasn't said. If you were a weirdo if you said that to somebody.
Right.
And I found music as a way, as an outlet to express my feelings without having to look like a weirdo or sound like a weirdo, quote, back then. And so I used music to express what I was really feeling deeply. And that I think a lot of musicians are so obsessed with their playing of their music for that reason. It's an outlet.
So, Bob, are you saying that music helped you express your love for people and things? Was that your way of saying, I love you?
Yeah, it probably was. It was a way to express my feelings for other people, or my desire to make people happy, to make them feel something.
Right.
A lot of music is about sound, but the key thing with music, performing music, is if you could make someone in your audience feel something. That's where it's at. And I think people go to concerts and pay good money to attend concerts and buy CDs, not really to hear the music that the performer's playing, but to feel something that they're not getting from anywhere else in our culture.
It's that moment, Bob, when you're listening to the CD, you're sitting in the audience, and you close your eyes.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, a lot of stuff going on, but you close your eyes, and then you just take it all in. That's the feeling, right?
That's very good. That's exactly what I'm saying, yeah.
And that's powerful, right?
I had an affirmation of that. It was a theory that I had, my little private theory, but I had an affirmation a while ago. A friend of mine, Jens Kruger, has a way, as you know, when he's performing, people are hypnotized.
Right.
It's like he's playing the banjo on stage, and people are just like with their mouths open staring at him.
Right.
And
he's so good.
I know. He's like one of the best musicians I've ever heard anywhere in the world. And I asked him once, Jens, how do you do that? How do you get people to be in your palm of your hand like you do? And I thought he was going to say, because he has a way of making eye contact with individuals in the audience randomly. And that makes them feel like they're the only person in that audience. Or he has this way of his magical work on the banjo is it's like fireworks.
Right.
And it wasn't, his answer was neither of those. And he even said, jokingly, he said, it's not my good looks, because I'm not good looking. He said, Bob, he calls me Bobbish. He says, Bobbish, here's how I do that. You got to get out of the way of the music. And I said, what does that mean? He said, get out of the way. He said, they're not coming to see you or even to hear you play or hear how good you are on your instruments. They're coming to feel something that they're in dire need of wanting to feel, emotions. And if you sit there and you're thinking while you're performing that they're here to be able to hear what you're playing or to see, you're wrong, and that has the opposite effect. It's a mental state that you put yourself in to get out of the way of the music, almost as if the music's here and you're in the chair next to it. And use your instrument and your music as a tool to give them something to feel, whether it's sadness or happiness or peace, whatever, or going back and forth among those things. And that's what they want. And when people respond, and he said afterwards when they come up and hug you and say, oh, I've never heard anything like that, they felt something coming from your music that you were playing, and you got out of the way, you became transparent on stage.
So are you suggesting that when they come up and hug you and tell you they haven't heard anything like that, that what that translates into is that they've had this emotional journey in a way that they haven't experienced that before?
Maybe never before. And a lot of times when they're hugging and saying this to you afterwards, they may not even realize what happened to them. But they know something important happened to them during that concert. And they may even think it's the music that you played, the notes, and your expertise, your mastery of your instrument. But they may not even realize it was an emotional experience that filled them up. It fed their soul.
So is the music the gateway to open up those feelings?
The music is, and the instrument is. They're the tools of the trade.
Right.
And just like a mechanic has a wrench, it's just a tool. And laying on the bench, it does nothing.
Right. Sure.
Or in the hands of a mechanic that isn't that good at using it, it's worthless. But in the hands of a master musician like Jens, who knows how to use that tool to produce that emotion, to give to people, is the key.
Aha! There it is. Right. That's amazing. I've seen that. I've seen that in Jens in his performance.
You know what I mean, then? Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it, and at the same time, when he does that, and when he's off stage, he's very gregarious and just fun-loving, and
he loves people, and he loves making people happy, and he loves people able to receive the emotion that he has a need to transmit that emotion to people. And that's as strong as his need to play his banjo.
Right.
Maybe even stronger. Maybe that's the reason he plays the banjo.
Well, he's certainly good at it, so that's a good thing. I think they're the host band for Carolina in the Fall.
Yes.
And I was talking to him one time about being able to do this in his basically hometown now.
Yeah.
Man, he had nothing but good things to say about that. So it's a good thing that they made the Carolinas their home, isn't it?
It is. We're all blessed by it. And, recently I was we were talking with him, and I said, Jens, because when he comes home from a tour, like one of their worldwide tours that they're always on, he calls local friends and says, hey, let's get together. I'm going to be home for a few weeks. And so I asked him, I said, Jens, man, you travel all over the world. You know thousands and thousands of people all over the world. And you come home and you call us to say, hey, let's have a cup of coffee. He said, yeah, I have thousands of friends, but they're music friends. He said, in Wilkesboro, I have a handful of real true friends that have nothing to do with music. And these are the people I miss when I'm all over the world. I can't wait to get back home to Wilkesboro again.
That's great. Yeah. That's a wonderful thing. Well, this portion of the podcast brought to you by Jens.
Yeah. Surprisingly, here we go. He has a way of doing this to people.
Good job, Jens. You're very clever about that. That's why you're so kind to us, because he wants to talk about it. You know we love you, Jens. That's for sure. Wow. I think what's great about this conversation now, I called you a few weeks ago and said, let's get together again because it's time, right? I'd read something about a fiddle that you had made and how the story you wrote about is like, oh, I better call Bob and see what's going on. And we hadn't talked in a while.
Yeah.
Right? And we talked about getting together and catching up. And not only just catching up, but looking at how music has continued to impact your life. You've gone through, as you shared, some, we all have our health things we deal with, and you've done that, you've conquered that, and music is there again, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not just music, but it's the creative aspect of it that you're involved with, and not in a small way now. All right. I remember when we sat down, we had a broadcast of our first piece. I think viewers responded well to that, and I had people ask me questions about this guy Bob Kogut and does he really name them all girls' names? I said, yes, he does.
Yeah.
That's what he does. And anyway, I was fascinated and with not just your life, but this combination story. And I think you and I just shared some things that we hadn't talked about before.
Yeah.
And I think I have a better understanding now of that journey you've had and why you continue to do this. And you're just not stopping because maybe as you help other people feel, it helps you feel too.
Well, I'd like to share with you something that happened to me, after I had open heart surgery about 3 years ago. And it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Right. It really was. They did such a good job. I have to give a plug to Wake Forest Baptist Hospital. That, like I mentioned, they're the A team. I was out of the hospital in 3 days after a triple bypass, so it went like clockwork. But what I wanted to share with you about that was when I got home. It was so good to get home, get out of the hospital. And one of the hardest points of my whole life, believe it or not, was the second day I was home. Roberta, my wife, helped me kind of stumble down the steps to my basement where my fiddle shop is, holding on with both hands, step by. I wasn't supposed to be allowed to do that yet, but I just needed to get back in my shop. Right. And prior to this happening to me, what I'm about to share with you, I always thought that, okay, I make fiddles, I make violins, it's a hobby, I didn't realize how important that was to me in my life, of who I was. I went down in the shop, and I got one of my hand planes, and they weigh about 8 pounds, maybe 10, one of those long hand planes. And I was standing there at the bench, and I had a nice, beautiful piece of curly maple that I was going to plane to start making my next fiddle. And I couldn't lift the plane up. I took it with my hands because you have this sternal thing, and you can't even cough hardly. It hurts so bad when you move. And so you're not supposed to be allowed to lift your arms up because it disturbs it before it's healed. Well, anyway, that's what happened. I thought, okay, I'm going to plane some wood because I love planing wood. I love making those little curls, Yeah. And when I went to lift the plane, I couldn't lift it. I couldn't even lift it 2 inches off the bench. And it really bothered me. Even though I knew that this is going to get better, give it a couple weeks. But the fact that I was stopped from making my fiddles tore me up. Isn't that strange? Out of all the things, like I couldn't drive for about a month. Okay, Roberta will drive me around. Right. I couldn't lift other things. Okay, but
it's that moment, Bob, of yes, I know, I've been told, I know where I'm going, but now when we have to face that moment of we can't do it, can't do something for the first time that you've been doing. That's an emotional drain.
It was very emotional, and part of it was I wanted to get myself back, and part of myself was
really quick
using it. Now today, right. Using tools, and when I found out that I cannot do it at that time, physically I couldn't lift that plane. It was only 8 pounds. I was devastated because my identity was I'm a violin maker. And when I got home, I just couldn't wait to get to the bench and be myself again. And I couldn't be myself again yet because I couldn't use my tools yet.
How long did it take?
And it took a few weeks. And little by little, now I don't even think about it, but little by little it came. But it is devastating emotionally. And I also, it helped me realize how important that is to me. It's my identity of turning wood into violins. And when you can't do it, it gave me a new respect for people, a new feeling for people who are disabled, either mentally and or physically, who no longer can do something that they used to love to do.
So you spent a career helping people in rehab, right? You saw people who their life had completely changed, dramatically changed. And was seeing had to be thousands of people, right, over the years.
Thousands,
Thousands of people you've worked with in rehab, of getting them back or getting them to their new them, right? But are you saying that for the first time in your life, it was when you tried to lift that 8-pound plane and you couldn't, that truly empathy came
Exactly. That is a very good way to put it. That's exactly the feeling I had. It was like, oh, I was thinking about all those thousands of people over the 47 years. I thought, that's what that felt like. Because you don't know, like you can have empathy for something someone's going through, but unless you had first-hand experience with that, you don't know. You could say, I know how you feel. You don't know how it feels. When that happens to you, even something that could be relatively trivial to someone else, oh, you can't lift up a hand plane. Well, I can't work anymore. I can't walk anymore. But to me, it wasn't trivial. That was my life.
No.
And then that's when I realized that's what all these people were feeling when I was working with them and they were disabled. That hurts. That goes deep.
So are you saying that that is a process you went through when you were going, you then looked back in time and said, oh, I get it. Because sympathy and empathy are two different things, right?
Absolutely.
So you can be sympathetic, but then empathy is when you got a first-hand accounting, right?
That's exactly. I mentally went back in time and thought of all the people I worked with, and I thought, that's what they were feeling. That's what they were going through. Now I know. I know that feeling.
But at the same time, you knew that there was a path for getting better, right?
A hope. I didn't know.
Hope.
There wasn't a no, but there was a hope. And it ended up being, Yeah. So it was a thrill to be able to start making fiddles again. For me, even more than playing. I love to play, but being at my bench making violins, I learned a lesson of how important that really is to me. And it's not a hobby. It's not just a hobby. It's in my DNA.
So, as a musician, as a physical therapist, as a musician, and the people that you performed in front of before you became a maker of the instrument yourself, so that number would be a lot of people. But now you're creating instruments that when Josh Goforth is performing in front of, thousands of people or whatever that number is, or Carrie, or all of these people that have your instrument with them on some really large stages. Do you think about not only the hundreds that you can touch when you're playing on stage, but the millions of people that you're literally your music? I mean, other people are playing, but you've created this instrument with certain tones and certain sounds. And I've talked to people that own your instruments, and they say that. They say, oh, this is perfect for me. You described it as the voice, right?
Yes.
So what point in your career making, your fiddle making, your violin making, I know it's how much you charge. I never will forget. I ask you which what do you make, fiddles or violins? Well, how much you sell it for? so I completely understand that part. But when was there that shift of seeing the impact that a unique instrument that you have created is? A musician falls in love with it and says, oh my gosh, this is perfect for me.
It actually was not a shift at all, Carl. It was the whole reason I felt led to begin making fiddles, violins, I'll call them fiddles, was for their voice, like you mentioned. It was a tone. It was like I felt this search for a holy grail of how a violin should sound. And that was the whole reason I started making them, was to create a voice that didn't exist anywhere yet, but existed in my soul. And I could hear it with my soul. And that was the whole reason I was crazy enough to start making them. And because it's a crazy thing to do. But anyway, that's a whole different story. And it's a life of joy and suffering all wrapped up in one. But anyway, that's another story. So anyway, to answer your question, it was all about its voice. And when a person would come over the shop, try my fiddles out that I made, and say, this is it. This is the fiddle of my dreams. I've got to have it. I want this. I'm taking this home. I knew what they were talking about. It wasn't the appearance of it. It was the voice that it had. And the better the musician, the more advanced the player, the more they were searching for that also. And that was what I was searching for. And
so in your search, you were striving, if I remember correctly in our first interview, you were striving for that perfect sound. The idea being is once you had created the perfect instrument, then that would be yours, and
right.
you might not have to make it anymore.
Right.
But over time, things change. It seems like maybe your health crisis that you dealt with, and the resurgence of life, and getting back to the bench, that's put a new vision, a new fire in your belly, right?
No.
No?
No.
Yeah. See how things could be assumed?
No.
All right.
Actually, no.
Tell me more. How did it happen then?
The last time you guys were over, you and Tim, I was making Shambhala.
That's right.
Who Tim named, by the way. Thank you, Tim.
Shambhala?
Shambhala. Thank you, Tim. He named it right there on the spot while we were working on it. And Shambhala ended up being, at that time, the best fiddle I ever made, in my opinion. Now we're talking about voice. I wouldn't win any gold medals for cosmetics. I mean, they look okay, they look good, but if I entered a violin-making competition, there's way more better sounding, looking violins than I make. They're okay, but that's not the reason I make them. I make them look as good as I can, but I'm into the voice. Anyway, I was sure at that point that it was the last fiddle I was ever going to make, because I reached my goal. It's the Holy Grail. It became there in 3 dimensions, and I thought, I'm done. I don't need to make them anymore. And a friend of mine, he lives in Pennsylvania. His name's Glenn Carson, and he's a master fiddler. He's an amazing old-time fiddler, and he's an engraver. He does a lot of the engraving work for commercial banjo makers.
Okay.
And he's just a true artist all around. And I got to meet him, and he came over to the shop, and he's looking at Shambhala, and he's playing, and he was saying, I like how this fiddle sounds. He heard her voice. He felt her voice like I did. And I said, what are you playing now, Glenn? And he took his fiddle, and he was playing it. And I said, which one do you like better? He said, this fiddle that you made is just amazing. It sounds like what I feel a fiddle should sound like. And I was thinking, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
So I gave him the fiddle.
Wow.
And Roberta my wife, she was so mad at me afterwards. I said, well, I gave Glenn the fiddle. He just loved it and felt like it. I just felt like it should be his. She said, yeah, but you've been working for decades making fiddles, and you told me that was the one. I said, I'll make another one. And so it wasn't my physical rebirth or, my new health or any of those things. It was, I realized that it wasn't supposed to be for me after all. What I mean wasn't supposed to be my search for that holy grail of voice in the fiddle. I realized I was wrong. It wasn't for me. It was for others who had that same curse and blessing that I have, that same obsession. Let me put it that way. And I just felt like he understands what I'm doing. Glenn understands that fiddle. He hears her voice.
Do you talk to Glenn often?
Yeah, we stay in touch.
So is it common that he gives you updates on Shambhala's performances?
The time.
Right?
He texts me and emails me about what the people are saying about how much he loves it. He just doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And I thought, all these years, I was kind of being selfish about thinking this is why I make violins. Someday I'll make my dream fiddle and then I'm done. I was wrong. And so this is number 280. It was a couple dozen I've made since Shambhala. Right. And this one I'm playing now is the other ones were pretty good, but this one, it was like, stands out.
Right.
And I'm telling Roberta, I'm not letting anyone see this one. I'm keeping this. If someone like Glenn stops by and says those things, it'll probably go, and I'll make another one.
Right.
And then I realized if I've arrived, I've done it, and if I did it once, I can do it again. Now I'm at a different level of making now. I'm no longer searching for hoping, dreaming someday I will make the ultimate holy grail. I've done it. In my opinion, I'm not bragging, but what I feel.
You've gotten there, you've done it, and you know you can do it again.
Yes,
right?
I did it once. Now I know I've graduated my own violin making school. I've done it.
Some people, imagine, well, we do TV, we do these things because it's such a profitable thing to do and all these. But that's not it.
No, it's not.
It has nothing. It literally has nothing to do with that. It's a passion for storytelling.
It's a necessary evil to make it possible in your life to be able to do it. But that's not the reason we do it. In a concert situation like Josh or Carly or people like top players, and if I'm in the audience and they happen to be playing a fiddle I made, I'm listening to that fiddle and I'm looking around at the audience to see if anyone's feeling that voice that fiddle has. And I should be thinking about how the master player is playing, but I'm thinking about the fiddle itself, the piece of wood performing. And because I'm hearing her voice, and even though it takes a master to bring that voice out, I'm thinking of the fiddle as the performer. And I'm like looking around at people and wondering, are they hearing her voice?
Can you spot it?
I'm not sure. I like to think that I can.
Right.
But that's I guess it's an insult to the player. I'd never tell one of those players I was doing that, but that's how I do it. I don't choose to do it. It's just, there's that fiddle. Oh yeah, that's her voice. I would sometimes want to stand up in the audience and say, can anybody hear that voice of that fiddle?
But isn't that kind of a natural type of a feeling, whether you have made an instrument to play, or you've designed a car, or you've made beautiful furniture? There's that great sense of pride, right?
Yeah, there is. It's more. I think it's more than pride, though. Yeah. I don't feel it as pride. I feel it as. Because it's not my voice, right. I'm part of the process of creating that voice. I didn't create the voice, I just did all the right things to make that voice come alive in that piece of wood. So, if I'm proud of anything, I'm proud of my determination to end up making something like that. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
no, of course it does. I mean,
Carly Arrowwood told me once. I was talking to her about her fiddle and her playing it, and I was talking about the voice, and she said something interesting to me. She said, "I'm sorry for my voice. I'm getting over a chest cold." She said that I love the voice of my fiddle. She said, with her being able to express herself musically to her audience, her fiddle allows her to be able to do that.
Juliana.
Other fiddles don't allow me to express that. So they're partners. She and Juliana are partners. And Juliana makes it possible for her to express her musical voice through that instrument.
So there's your answer, Bob.
It's a partnership.
That's your answer. Absolutely, the audience feels it.
It's amazing that Carly, over the years, I forget how many years ago now, she's had Juliana. And Carly is one of the primo violinists in this country, probably in the world. And it's amazing to me that she still plays Juliana. She has access to any violin that she would ever want, probably. and she still plays Juliana. And that means more to me than when she first selected it at Merlefest that year and said, I want that fiddle. But some players are so good, they could fall down on a fiddle and make it sound good.
Yes.
Or they could make a cigar box sound
Metaphorically speaking.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, Bob, I'm sure if you were making fiddles out of cigar boxes, you would make fine cigar box fiddles. That for sure would not be a violin, though, right?
Well, I think it's... I don't want to say it's not skill, but it's a passion that makes it happen. It's a determination and a belief in yourself, and a belief in your passions, and a determination, and stick to it. And skill is maybe a part of it, and that skill is developed over time through the passion.
Sure.
But that's how it happens. It's not that I have this magical fairy dust sprinkled on me that I can make these fiddles that everybody wants. It's just craziness. It's just an obsession and a passion and patience to wait decades and keep doing it. Don't give up, and it'll happen. And that's a lesson in life, I think, about probably anything.
I like that, Bob. You have a new friend with you. Could we meet her?
Yes.
I always know it's a her because they're all hers, right?
I call her Sammy. Her name is Samantha.
So Samantha is your newest?
She's my newest. She's number 280.
Number 280.
I'd like to show it to you.
Yeah. Would you please?
All right. Take a minute to get it out of the case.
That's fine.
Okay. Sammy. I think she's pretty, too.
Wow. Can I look?
Please. You won't hurt her.
Wow. She looks like a classic. I mean, she looks like she's been around a long time. I know she's not. She's a newborn, but my goodness. Certainly is beautiful.
I like to do a procedure when I finish a fiddle that I make called antiquing. And like you mentioned, a classic, I darken the corners, I darken the scroll turns, and I sometimes abrade the wood to make it look old. And the reason I do that is, two reasons. The first reason is I think it looks cool. I like the look of a vintage-looking violin. But another reason I do it is I don't have the skill to do a fiddle that with a brand new finish that looks new, that is clean enough. I don't have that finishing skill, so I hide it by making it look vintage.
Well, you've done a good job with this one, Bob. Wow. Maybe that's part of the feel. It feels familiar. It's new, but it doesn't look new, and it just feels familiar. I love that.
I do little carvings on the wings, on the top and the back.
Thank you, Bob.
When I was a Boy Scout, I used to love carving out of basswood neckerchief slides. And so that was just a little thing that I've always had in my life. So now when I make fiddles, I do these little leaf carvings on it. Some makers don't some players don't like it. They say, oh, you should make it look just like a Stradivarius. And I don't care. I say, well, I'm not trying to copy a Guarneri or a Stradivarius. This is my model, and my model is those carvings.
Sure. You spoke about her voice. Could we hear it?
Yeah, I'll try to play. I'm not that good of a player, but I like to play them enough to hear what they sound like.
Well, she certainly is beautiful.
Let me draw the bow and all, Sammy. I can't put it into words as far as her voice. There's something about her voice that has that quality that I've been searching for. The other couple dozen fiddles that I made since Shambhala turned out pretty good, but nothing where when I drew the bow for the first time after finishing it, it's like, wow. And she's the one that does that. The other fiddles are gone. Players played them and they said, this is the one, and they wanted them, which make me very happy.
Sure.
I've made some fiddles where I didn't even care for the sound of them. They don't all sound good when I make them, But I've had some fiddles where I thought, I don't even know if I'm going to show these to people. I don't care and someone would come over and play it and say, this is it.
So it would be the one for them.
For them.
Right.
And I even say, are you sure?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm pretty honest. I'm not a good salesman. I say, I don't even like that one.
Right.
They go, no, this is the one.
Well, they probably think you're trying to do the takeaway sell, right?
Yeah. Actually, I've already made another one since our number 181, 281. And I have number 282 on the bench now. And we'll see how she turns out. And if she turns out as good as this one or better, I'll let this one go. So that's my frame of mind now. I used to say, as soon as I make the one of my dreams, I'm done. No, I made a few of my dreams, and I can't wait to make the next one of my dreams.
No, that's wonderful, Bob.
And I can't keep them all. So,
no.
But as soon as I drew the bow, she had that tone, that texture that I was searching for. It's like has the voice of an angel. What do you think? Isn't it nice?
Well, Bob, you're remarkable.
It's got the voice of an angel. It's a dark angel.
Why would you do that?
Oh, have I done that before? Oh, man.
Yeah, it's a running joke. It's Bob's running joke.
I do that in my shop. And people have that same expression that you just had, Carl, on your face. They're nice people. They want to be nice. And they tilt their head a little bit. They go, and then they go, And I tell them it's a joke. They don't sit there and say, oh, it sounds like crap. You got to be kidding. I'm leaving. I'm out of here. They go, I can't play like I used to be able to because my tremor that I had after my motorcycle accident has come back. Fortunately, I'm able to play because I'm gripping the neck of the fiddle, but not like I used to. And I'm able to use tools. I'm left-handed, but I play right-handed. So my tremor's in my left hand. And when I pick up a tool, the heavier the better, because if I have weight in it, the tremor behaves. But like taking like that glass of water, if I would take it and try to take a sip out of it, I'd spill it. But I just make do with what I have. My orthopedist way back in 1968, he said, when you get old, that tremor's going to come back. Or the neurologist told me that. And I thought, yeah, what do you know? Well, he was right, it's back. But, you just make do with what we have left.
Well, Bob, you're able to make the instruments, so that's huge.
And it doesn't really all come from here, it comes from here. And that's still there.
Right.
She's just balanced, has a nice woody, warm voice. All the strings are balanced. And again, it's hard to pick words, to put into words, voicing. But you just feel it. So, but in the hands of a really good player, it really comes out. So that's Samantha.
So do you expect, have you had any calls about her? I know you haven't. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple people waiting to see if I'm going to keep her or not.
Right. Well, Bob Kogut, as always, it's been wonderful for us to spend time together.
Me too.
Hearing your story, and believe it or not, we talked about things we hadn't talked about before, which was great.
Yeah.
I mean, that first time, when you let me work on a piece of wood there, and the shavings. Remember that?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's dance with this girl and see what happens.
All right.
I mean,
now, the first swipe, don't get discouraged.
No.
It's not going to happen. So it's going to take a few to get used to it.
All right. Okay.
And go fast. Oh, that's sounding good.
I feel good about it. I heard it. I felt
now look
it.
At your curl.
Now,
look
are we
at,
ready?
look,
this
look
is the big. This is
look
the tail,
it.
right?
Oh,
this
I'm
is
jealous.
the tail. Oh, look at that.
Look at you,
Bob. Look at that. Wow.
Wait a minute. We didn't sneak that curl in with the camera off.
No, of course not.
That was his real curl. Look at that. It's perfect.
I'm a.
It's perfect.
Perfect.
Look, end to end. Stretch it out.
Pretty
Your
good,
first
though,
time.
right?
Oh, you got the hands, Carl. You got the skill.
Perfect.
Look at that. Look how nice that is.
Senorita Perfecta.
Senorita.
Senorita Perfecta.
That could be a name.
It could be a name. Well, we have that. We still have that. And
I do too.
And
I have it on YouTube and I watch it sometimes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Isn't that the perfect place for it?
Yes.
All of our stuff is there. Yeah, that's a great thing. Well, I remember those moments, and now we have more memories together. And
yes, we do.
I really appreciate this, Bob. It's great seeing you. Thanks for coming
Yes, thanks
over.
for having me. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks for listening to the Life in the Carolinas podcast. If you enjoyed your time with us, please visit the show's website at lifeinthecarolinas.com. Join our mailing list, and we'll keep you updated every week on what we have coming up and other interesting things around the Carolinas. We value you as a podcast subscriber. We'll see you next week. And remember what Carl says, it's never a bad time for a good story.